Test, test, test. Good. Sounds okay? 10 minutes to get over there? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome out to our, I think we're at our 5th, maybe, quarterly town hall that we've done. I want to thank you all for taking the time to come out tonight. For those who have never been to one, I just wanted to give you a bit of background of how and why we do them, and then what the rules of engagement are. And there really aren't very many rules. We try to keep these as accessible and easy to participate in as possible. So the reason that we started these is because we wanted to have a more accessible, easy way for residents to be able to come out and ask questions. We know that council meetings can be very formal and very rigid, and we wanted something that was a little more approachable, where everybody could come, ask the questions that are on your mind. It doesn't have to be on an agenda. It can just be whatever's bothering you from your neighborhood. We'll try our best with the staff team that are here and the council members that are joining me to answer your questions. Anything that we can't answer, we will take your name and phone number, and we will try and get back to you as soon as possible to try and get you an answer to the question that you've got. We do have our great staff here, but they don't have all the answers right at the tip of their fingertips, but they will do their very best to answer what they can. So the rules are pretty simple. Unlike a council meeting, you don't need to give your name and address. You can if you want to, but it's not mandatory because we're not taking minutes, so there's no minutes recorded here. You'll see that I'm only joined by 2 other members of council. That's just because we can't have quorum when we do a meeting like this, so there can only be 3 of us here at a time. So tonight I have Councillor Sherwood and Councillor Prendergast joining me, and I'm really glad that you're here. They're both going to give updates on their portfolios that they take care of in some of their committees. The only other rule that we've got is that when we go to the Q&A parts, we're going to start the day off by staff presentations. We're going to be talking about municipal budgeting tonight. So the staff are going to do a bit of a presentation. We'll take a short break, and then we'll come back for the open mic Q&A. And the only rules for participating, again, you don't have to give your name and address, but you do have to be respectful. We're all a community. We're all trying to work together to solve the issues of the day. And we don't want to end up a viral video on YouTube. So we get to have these nice events because everybody's been really great and wonderful. This is not an episode of Parks and Rec. So we try to make sure that we don't end up being a viral video. So again, just respectful. These are staff who live here and who work and take care of this town. So that's the only rules that I've got. I'm going to turn it first over to Councillor Sherwood, who is going to give her update. You can use the mic.
Is this already on?
Yep, should be.
Okay.
Nope.
Nope.
Down. No?
There you go.
Okay, we're good. All right, so aside from being a councillor, of course, we have appointments onto different boards and committees. I have the privilege of serving as the municipal representative on the Theatre Orangeville board. So I'm going to put a plug in for the newest production that's coming up starting October 17th called Tip of the Iceberg. It's about 2 Newfoundland friends of 70 years of friendship. And there'll be some fun and some folk and some song and dance there. So I really encourage you to get some tickets and support your theater. Better than going downtown and supporting Mr. Mervish and his heavy pockets. So I would really encourage you to try and take in this great production. Also, I am also privileged for, this is my 6th year now because it's my 2nd year on council, of being chair of Heritage Orangeville. I'm extremely passionate and really, really engaged with this committee, the Heritage Committee. And of course, it's mandated by the Ontario Heritage Act that municipalities have an advisory committee. So we are an advisory committee. And of course, our focus is making sure that we preserve and look after our heritage and our culture. And there's been a lot of changes recently with Doug Ford's government regarding Bill 23 and building homes faster, where heritage properties and heritage homes are really in jeopardy and risk of being demolished. So it's very important that our committee really fights to keep our buildings and our heritage preserved. We have over 400 properties that are in a non-designated registry, and part of the role of the committee is to check out over as many properties as we can to see if we can get them designated. That just gives further protection. The annual thing that our committee does that we're very, very proud of and is very well taken by the community is our annual heritage calendars. And they're absolutely, like, I love to brag about them because they're just so full of so much heritage and information about the history of our ancestors going right back to our founders. And this year we're working on through the decades, and it's going to be really exciting to see how Orangeville transformed from the late 1800s right up to the early 1990s. We also have our footsteps from the past for those of you that like to hike. And there's some 3 really great heritage tours that you can take, maybe a half-hour walk. And this booklet will give you information and guide and lots of information about very significant properties throughout our town. So I encourage everyone, if you could, to do 1 or 2 or all 3 of these walks. If you're not able to actually go out and walk it, our website has a link, and there's an actual walk right through to every single property in here, and they've actually added like a ghost tour. Tabitha, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, okay, I think I'm putting you on the spot right now, and I'm sorry. I thought it was your
It sounds familiar.
Actually, you know what? It was Vicky and her team over at the Love Orangeville. So again, you can go on the website and do the tour if you're not able to physically go and walk. We meet once a month, the third Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock. And I encourage any of you to come if you want to come and share some thoughts on anything to do with Orangeville Heritage, and maybe see what our committee's all about. And also, if you're interested, you can apply and be on the committee, because we always are looking to recruit anyone that's willing to volunteer. So I'm available afterwards for any questions regarding heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. When is the calendar going to be ready?
Hopefully December.
In December. Okay, excellent. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for coming this evening. Tonight I'm going to touch on the 3 committees and boards of which I'm part of. This year, we started our inaugural Affordable Housing Task Force under the tutelage of Councillor Joe Andrews, who is ultimately the guru in this department, and I'm there to assist in that regard. On that committee, or task force, we are working to address the increasing demand for attainable housing in Orangeville. We've begun investigating the active promotion through education campaigns of adding additional secondary dwelling units, such as basement apartments or granny suites, to existing properties. And it's just about providing, we're looking at starting an education campaign to let existing residents know what they could do with their existing properties and potentially generate some revenue for themselves in a way that would suit their lifestyles. These units would be essential in providing more affordable housing while utilizing the current land that we have effectively. Additionally, we're considering solutions to entice and collaborate with developers to explore multi-generational housing designs, enabling families to live together in adaptable spaces that meet their evolving needs. So those are 2 things that we are looking at doing at a municipal level to affect change and address the housing issues here in town. We're also looking forward, and the task force will be meeting with people who have innovative solutions in a variety of non-traditional types of housing, such as tiny or modular homes. We have yet to hear from those experts, but that is something we're planning on doing this year and hope to report back to Council at the end of this calendar year. I'm also on Sustainable Orangeville as the Vice Chair of that committee, and I'm pleased to announce that we do have a community tree planting event happening on Saturday, October 19th, off of Gooseberry at Mill Creek. Last year, we had a bit of a snowstorm in April when we had our last tree planting, and several members are here in the audience, but it's quite a hoot. We plant 200 to 300 native shrubs and trees with our neighbors, young children, to the elderly, and it's really just a community-driven event, and it's accessible to anyone who would like to come and try to plant some trees with us, and I encourage you to do so. Sustainable Orangeville also has a number of other initiatives, including the Urban Harvest Program, which grows food and collects food for the food bank. This year, I believe, donating over 1,000 pounds of food. Correct me if I'm wrong, 2,000? 2,000, so it's been a banner year for Urban Harvest. So addressing food security within the community is also a large pillar or mandate of that committee. We also have a grant program, which you can stay tuned for details. If you are a resident who would like to lead an environmental project that has community benefit, you can start thinking about it. Addressing issues like water conservation, food security would be top of mind right now, or active transportation, but how you could implement a project locally that would impact the community in a beneficial way. And we're looking at about how much grants can be given for, but it's going to be upwards of $1,000. And there will be, hopefully, an information evening for that coming up probably in December or January. I'm also on the Orangeville Library Board, and October marks the Canadian Public Library Month. We are celebrating the essential role that our library plays in the life of the town. We have introduced self-checkout at both locations while maintaining the high level of service that everyone expects, but also creating user autonomy for those that may not want to engage with customer service representatives. Additionally, there's also the Story Walk at Island Lake. I don't know if anyone has been able to check that out yet, but what's really special in the month of October, it's going to be featuring poems from our local young artists. The library ran a program after school teaching poetry, and the children that participated, their work will now be featured proudly at the Story Walk at Island Lake. And shameless plug, my kids were all part of that program, so now their artwork is going to be at Island Lake. But it's nice to see the end result of that. And anyone is welcome to sign up for these free programs through the library. And next month, the display will transition to tribute the Dufferin veterans, highlighting stories and photographs of our local veterans of war in that same Story Walk. So the idea is to educate, promote activity, enjoy nature, and celebrate our rich history in Dufferin County. Some more things happening at the library. There's going to be a spooky open mic spectacular on October 27th in collaboration with the Headwaters Writers Guild. As well, there's going to be the Friends of the Orangeville Public Library book sale. Oh wait, book and bake sale. I forgot the important part. And that's also on October 19th. So October 19th is going to be a very busy day. It's Boo on Broadway. There is the book and bake sale, and there's also tree planting. And if you attend all three, let me know, because I would be very happy for you. That's a lot to do. So many opportunities to engage the community coming up this month, and I am also very, very thankful for the collective efforts of every one of the board members, the benevolent volunteers on the committees, because none of these things would be possible without the community coming together and creating these happy experiences for the residents. If you have any questions, like Councillor Sherwood, I'll be here afterwards. If you have any concerns, questions, ideas, or suggestions, please talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. We are now going to go into staff presentation, so I want to first introduce you. We've got our CAO, David Smith, who's going to start us off. Then we're going to go to Cheryl Braun, our new CFO, our Acting Deputy Treasurer, Rebecca Medeiros, and Tim Koslek, our GM of Infrastructure Services. In that order, are going to speak, so we'll start with David Smith.
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Delighted to be here. Has anyone noticed the price of butter? Right? Crazy, right? So I've started making my own butter, and I know that sounds, thank you. I wasn't sure if you were saying I should take a drink or whether you were doing this. I've started making my own butter. I don't do it for stuff that I'm baking, but for on my toast and stuff like that, you just take whipped cream, put it in a beater, and leave it, and 10 minutes later you've got butter. You put a little bit of salt in, and it's delicious. The challenge is we can't make everything. Can't make everything ourselves. So we have to buy things. As you know, you were doing that, we're doing that. And our cost in the municipality, those costs are increasing, much like your costs are increasing for butter and other things like that. Our costs are increasing, and they're increasing exponentially. We don't buy a lot of butter. We're buying asphalt, we're buying construction products, we're buying utilities, we're buying municipal insurance, and those costs continue to rise much more quickly than typical consumer costs. When you compare the consumer price index, the municipal price index, or the basket of goods that a municipality buys, are increasing at a much higher rate. In fact, in some areas, we don't talk about an annual cost of inflation. In some areas, we have to talk about a monthly cost of inflation. How much prices are going on a month-to-month basis. We all focus a lot on our property taxes. That's universal. I do it, and I'm sure all of you do it. But we don't typically spend time thinking about all of the taxes we pay in Canada. We're a very taxed country. And it's interesting because we focus in on property taxes. It's a check we write or a direct debit that comes out. Other taxes like tax on gasoline, the HST, climate change tax, income tax, all of those other taxes are things that sometimes we don't really focus on as much as we should. Have you ever wondered, probably not, but have you ever wondered of your tax dollar, how much of it comes to the municipality? So if you take $1 and say, okay, this is going to taxes, depending on the year and where you live in Canada, but the Federation of Canadian Municipalities estimates about 8 cents of your tax dollar comes to the local government. 92 cents goes to the federal government and provincial government. And of that tax money, of that 8 cents, and it's different in different provinces, but it's close. Some might be 9 cents, some might be 7 cents. Of those 8 cents that we collect of your tax dollar, that money goes to the local municipality, town of Orangeville, it goes to the local school board, and it goes to the county of Dufferin. So you take that 8 cents, somewhere around 5 cents probably comes to your local municipality, comes to the town of Orangeville. So when you're thinking about taxes, it's always important to think about the scale of taxation in Canada and where your taxes are going. And I'm going to show, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. We wrestle, the municipality, we wrestle with inflation like you do. We wrestle with infrastructure, both new and old, renewing our infrastructure, repairing our infrastructure, building new infrastructure. Our funding from the province and federal government is dropping. Every budget year, we're getting less money from them. New service levels that our residents either are requesting or we're required to put in. And of course, we have labor costs increase. So there's lots of different factors that go into making our municipal budget. In fact, Cheryl and Rebecca and I spent all day, started at 8:30, all day today, working on our budget, and they're going to talk a little bit more about that. But how do our taxes kind of go together? You know, how does the premise work? And this is fairly basic, and for some of you, you'll understand it. For some of you, it might create a light bulb. Let's say we were building a new town, and we had 10 of us living together. And of course, every town needs a name, so we're going to call ours Rushville, because that kind of resonates with many of us. So there's 10 residents of Rushville, and we're all putting $1,000 into the tax pot. So we have a budget of 10,000 people. And we say, hey, you know what, we're tired of bringing the water from the river to our home, so let's build a well. We can all use it, it makes sense, it's easier in the winter, and that well is gonna cost, let's say, $1,000. So our budget's gone from $10,000 to $11,000. Now we have a choice. So yeah, I knew I was gonna say this, so I picked numbers that I could do the math on. We have a choice. We can say, hey, everybody's tax bill is going from $1,000 to $1,100. Okay, that gives us the extra 1,000. Or we can say, hey, would your cousin like to live in our community? And if they move here and pay $1,000, we have that extra $1,000 we need. So our funding is a blend of tax increases, typically, and assessment growth. Growth in our community, bringing new residents in, bringing new businesses in, more people to contribute to the tax levy and tax base. In Orangeville, our taxes have increased, property taxes, about 2% a year on average over the last 5 years. So I'll say that again, in Orangeville, our property taxes have increased about 2% a year over the last 5 years. Our assessment growth over the same period of time has been about 0.8% of growth. And that's a really, really low number. So when you take those two things together, I would say low, I know you may not, a low 2% tax increase over the last 5 years each year, and that 0.8% of assessment growth, those are two pretty low numbers. They've been lower relative, you know, depending on your perspective, they've been lower than what our community needs. It's easy to look back and say we shoulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, that type of stuff. but we're focused on the future. And that means determining what services we need to provide, the town needs to provide, and we get direction from council to deliver the services that you want at a way that we can responsibly afford. We want to provide a town that protects the health and safety of our community with safe drinking water, safe roads, emergency response. And we want a community that is one that you want to live in. You want to come to the arena, you want to go walk the trail, you want to be in our parks, you want to go to our recreation centers and use our library on a regular basis. Not only do we want you to live here, a community that you want to live in, we also want it to be a community that businesses will come and locate here. That balance of tax and growth is what fuels our community. All of Ontario is struggling with infrastructure. There's not a community in Ontario that infrastructure isn't high on their radar. We have wells in our town that are over 50 years old. We have stormwater ponds that haven't been maintained in over 30 years. We have this aging infrastructure. Every town does. So this isn't, you know, I could be standing in Smithville, not Smithville, Rushville. And I was looking at Matthew Smith, I said Smithville. But he's a Rush fan too, so we're good there. And saying the same message is this infrastructure gap is real, it's important, and every municipality continues to fall behind. With council's support and your support, we're going to work to close that gap. Is that going to happen overnight? Well, it's going to happen over the next 30 or 40 years, quite frankly. That's how long it's going to take us. I'm wrapping up. I'm going to ask you for a leap of faith, and I'm going to tell you why. We're going to watch a very short video about how municipal budgets work. It's not the video that I previewed. We can't stream the one that I previewed here. So we're watching one that I haven't seen. I have great faith in it, but I'm going to tell you a story. A long time ago, I was asked by the city of Brampton to come and speak to their part-time summer staff. And I did. And the next speaker was coming up, and their topic was cross-contamination. And I thought it was for, well, everybody thought it was for, they were lifeguards about artificial respiration, wearing a mask and that kind of stuff. Well, the video wasn't. It was on good, safe sex practices. So it was a surprise. So you can imagine your 15-year-old coming home from first day of summer camp training and saying, hey, what did you learn? We're not going to show that video, but I haven't seen this video. Some of the numbers will not be exactly appropriate for Orangeville. Some of them are provincial, but it's a video created by the Municipal Treasurers Finance Association of Ontario. So it's Ontario-centric, and it will reflect some of the things I spoke about. So if we can play that, and I'm going to go turn out the front row lights. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long.
We really did test this.
Okay, I would like to help you understand how your municipality develops its budget. We always hear about them, and often this can feel like another language altogether. Before we get started, there's important information you should know. Ontario municipalities, like the municipality of MFOA, receive approximately 9% of all taxes collected, but are responsible for over 50% of the infrastructure.
Let's start by looking at what the word budget means. Well, simply put, it's a planned, itemized summary of money that is coming into the municipality and how that money is spent for a specific period of time. It's very important to note that provincial government legislation in Ontario states money coming in equals money going out, also known as revenue equals expenditures or a balanced budget. The municipality of MFOA provides more than 60 services to the citizens of the municipality. So municipal council and administration always have to make difficult decisions to ensure this balancing takes place. There are two main components of the budget when looking at the money going out side of the scale. Operating pays for all the day-to-day activities of the corporation. This includes items such as salaries and wages, utilities, supplies, fuel, and insurance, just to name a few. The capital budget pays for all the new big investments or the rehabilitation of current assets under the municipality's control. So let's focus on how the municipality collects to pay for all these services. For every dollar that comes into the municipality, 64 cents comes from property taxes, 21 cents from grants and subsidies, and 15 cents from user fees and other sources. So, now we've learned what a budget is, how municipalities collect money, and how they spend it. Now let's take a look at how these pieces work together. Money comes in through property taxes, grants and subsidies, and user fees. The money collected is required for both the operating and capital budget. We've already talked about the operating budget, including day-to-day expenses, but it also includes money for funding capital budgets. The capital budget pays for all the new big investments or the rehabilitation of current assets under the municipality's control. This connection is made through three methods. The capital levy method reflects a pay-as-you-go approach. The reserve fund method, which reflects a planned, save now, acquire, or use later approach, and the debt payment approach. Okay, so let's recap. 1. A budget is a plan for money coming in and money going out. There are two building blocks to the municipality's budget, operating and capital. 2. The operating budget is like you're paying your house bills to keep the lights on. Just like in a normal household, our bills go up with inflation. 3. The capital budget is like your major outlays, vehicles, house, renovations, etc. 4. Money comes in from three sources: property tax levy, user fees, and grants and subsidies. 5. Money coming in is used to deliver over 60 services to municipality residents. 6. Municipal council and administration, with the input of the public, decide how to best balance the municipal budget guided by provincial legislation. And that is how your municipality develops its budget.
Phew, that was fairly safe. Mayor, I'm finished, so we're
Okay.
gonna pass it along and we'll take questions.
Perfect.
So Cheryl and Rebecca are going to speak.
Can everybody hear me fine? I'm not sure I can compete with such a stimulating video, but I'll give it a shot. So our town services come with ongoing operating costs, as demonstrated in the video, and we also need to make capital investments to support future needs of our community. This includes investing in things like roads, water, wastewater, stormwater, and other such systems, and town facilities like community centers, pools, and libraries. The town budget helps us to plan how we are going to maintain and care for what we already have, ensuring these assets are kept in good shape, while also responsibly planning for the needs of our growing community. As the needs of the community grow and change, we must plan to make sure that our programs and services remain effective and affordable. We do this through integrated asset and growth management plans. These plans help us to ensure that capital works are done at the right time, with the right scope, for the right cost, and that we have a plan to pay for the work, leveraging a combination of the limited funding sources, which are property taxes, user fees and rates, grants from senior levels of government, and development charges. As a town, long-term planning should support and drive the idea that growth pays for growth, and that the cost of future growth should, wherever possible, not be a burden placed on current residents. To help with this, finance staff are working on a long-term integrated financial plan. This plan will guide how we fund key projects over time. Some tools in the plan will include a policy framework and longer-term funding strategies. These tools will help to make sure that we can keep up with our infrastructure and growth needs in a financially sustainable way. For example, the first part of the plan focuses on updating our user fees so that they better match inflation and reflect the true cost of service. A responsible budget is a sustainable one. It's about fairness. Current and future tax and ratepayers should each pay for the services and infrastructure that are available to them. We don't want to leave future generations with debt for services that only benefit today's residents. Our annual budget process is designed to carefully balance approved service levels and the current and future needs of our community with organizational capacity and affordability. I'd like to turn it over to Rebecca to provide an overview of the budget development process that is designed to support this overall goal of being financially sustainable and affordable.
Thank you, Cheryl. Now let's talk about how the town of Orangeville's budget process works, including the timelines, the steps involved, and how we arrive at the final budget. The budget process takes several months. Each spring, the finance team starts by reviewing last year's budget as a baseline, and we adjust it for any expected cost increases or decreases. Then the various departments look at the estimates we provide and refine them further based on their knowledge and experience. After we have initial cost estimates for operating capital plan budgets, we go through 3 key review stages. First, the finance team reviews everything to make sure that the budget meets expectations. Then our general managers and the CAO review the budgets to ensure that the senior leadership team can support the budget. Finally, the budget is presented to council in December for review and their deliberation. Preparing the budget involves a lot of work. Our finance staff and managers spend months reviewing their needs for both operating costs and capital costs. They consult with staff, senior leadership, vendors, and consultants, and then build this information into their budgets. After that, finance works with each department to find savings while still maintaining services and, where possible, enhancing services or adding new ones. We must also balance the funding for our capital projects. This means looking at sources such as grants, development charges, reserves, and if necessary, borrowing options, and balance the budget over the 10-year capital plan. Our goal is to always present a fully funded, financially sustainable budget that meets the town's needs. The plans must be balanced with resourcing capacity, such as financial or staff, and affordability. So we look at financial and staffing constraints and shift the 10-year capital plan based off of needs. To build a financially sustainable budget, we must consider factors like inflation, existing contracts, operating expenditures, collective agreements, capital projects, trends, and future forecasts. We keep in mind how any tax increase will impact our residents, focusing on what is financially sustainable for both residents and the town itself. Once all the numbers are finalized, we compile the information into a budget document that provides all the key details for both council and Orangeville residents to review in December each year. That's all the information we have lined up to share with you tonight. I hope you find this helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Cheryl. Over to Tim Koslek.
So just want to give you some context. I was looking at my notes, and I skipped this part. One of the things that the municipal staff use is service levels. So what is an acceptable service level that the community wants and can afford? And we set those service levels for different services so that you can expect a certain level of service that we can afford and is reasonable, and it meets our legislative requirements and other things like that. So Tim is going to give an example of a service level that we picked to share with you because it's something that you all experience. And when he shared with me, I went, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So this isn't a formal approved service level, but when Rebecca and Cheryl were speaking, they were talking about the long-range financial plan, establishing formal service levels so it's clear to the community what you can expect and how much it will be is part of our path forward. So Tim is going to share a service level related to roads.
Great, thanks, David. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay, or? Perfect, perfect. So, wanted to talk a little bit about our asset management, in particular our roads, and some of the work we're doing on our roads programs. I guess one of the big objectives and goals we have is, what do we own? What roads do we have? What condition is it in? What do we need to keep it in good condition? And how much will it cost? So one of the things we've done is we had all our roads, the condition assessment done. So with that, in the olden days, you'd have two people drive around. They'd say, I think this road's a 55 out of 100. I think it's 60. You'd argue it out. Now they have equipment that's made for it. They have cameras built on the vehicles. They have motion sensors. So when they go on the roads, they can tell the riding coefficient. They can tell if there's cracking. They can tell all this. So at the end of the day, we can get a map that shows the condition of the roads throughout the municipality. And that goes a long way towards our asset management and our maintenance. It also helps us coordinate our programs. If we know the condition of the surface of the road, we know the condition of the sewers underneath it, we know the break history on a water main, it helps us develop our capital programs. So here are some facts about the Orangeville roads. We have about 125 centerline kilometers of roads. Using the center lines, you have traffic going in both directions. If you're doing it in one direction, we'd have lane kilometers of about 250 kilometers. And the replacement value is just over $300 million. So if you're going to build the town and make a new Rushville, it would cost about $305 million to build all our roads. And with growth, we're averaging 1% to 3% per year. The last few years have been a little quieter, as David mentioned, but historically that's been the growth. So when we do the condition of the roads, there's a pavement condition index, and it's basically almost a percentage from 0 to 100. So you can see on the list, if you're 86 to 100, it's very good. It's kind of like kids' marks when they come home. You get 86 to 100, you're very good. All the way down to poor, very poor when you get less than 50%. And you can see on the screen, when we did the assessment in 2025, our average rating was about 65. The town's goal is to have an average rating of about 70, so we're trying to work on improving the road condition index. I always think a picture is worth 1,000 words, so just wanted to show a few of the different roads. So if you're considering something that's an 80, it's a road in very good shape. There's little to no cracking, no real defects. It looks like a very solid road. 70 to 80, still a pretty good road. You do have some cracking. You do have a little bit of issues, but fundamentally, it's still in pretty good shape. When it drops down to 60 to 70, that's usually when you have some more localized issues or what they call alligator cracking. You can see on the right side, just because it looks like a little bit of an alligator, but that's typically when you have base problems and the road starts breaking out a little bit. And then when you drop down below 60, that's when your road, it's in poor condition. It's reached the end of its life. Typically, there's drainage issues when you have a road like that. They don't stand up as well. So one of the things we're looking at doing, or I guess in our evaluation, if we wanted to improve all the roads to bring them up from 65 to all 100, it would be about $46 million. So we don't have that kind of money. So we do have a robust restructuring and resurfacing program. So when I talk about resurfacing, I always think this is an important sort of graph to look at. If you look at the lifespan of a road, it's not a straight line. Typically, they last very well, and then they more or less drop off. When it starts going and breaking up, that's when your roads really fail. So one of the things you can see at the top, it says spend $1 preservation here. That's part of our road resurfacing program. So we'll take some of those roads that are maybe in the 60s, 70s. We're able to grind off, I'm old, I say 2 inches of asphalt instead of 50 millimeters, or maybe it'd be 4 inches, and you'd repave the road. So you don't have it go as far as that one I showed that was 60. With that, you'd have to remove everything. But if you can catch it before it gets too bad, you can fix the top layer of asphalt, and it lasts a lot longer. So with this is our general maintenance program. If you have a road that's under 20 years old, usually we'll do some localized patching. There'll be maybe some catch basin repairs. Typically when they're 20 to 40 years, that's when we'll do a resurfacing. So we grind off, say 2 or 4 inches of the road and repave it. We do any repairs to the concrete as part of that program. And typically, if you do the maintenance, you can do that again at about the 40-year to 60-year mark. So it reduces your costs. So you're not, it's about, I always think about 15% of the cost of reconstructing a whole road. If you have to go in, dig everything out, replace all the sewers, everything, resurfacing, it's a good bang for your buck. It reduces your cost. Typically, water mains and sewers last 50 to 70 years. So if we can have our road last about that same length, then we can do all the repairs at once. So I guess one good example we did last year was on Broadway. So you can see the picture here. I would rate that sort of a 65, 60. The road's still stable, doesn't have big rutting, it doesn't have big elevator cracking, but it is starting to fail. So in this case, we went in, ground off the top asphalt. The curbs and sidewalk were still already in good shape from the Broadway Bricks program. But with the road, we came in, one day the contractor can come in, grind the asphalt, you can still drive on it that night because there's no soft asphalt. And then one other day they come in and paved the road. So in this case, the road was paved in one day, they came back after to do the line painting, but there was very little disturbance with it. That's one of the nice things with the resurfacing program. So we're trying to increase the amount of resurfacing we do in town. And that's one thing, sometimes people will come forward and say, my road's the worst in town, why isn't it being done? But we can probably do 5 roads resurfacing it instead of reconstructing that one road. So we're trying to preserve the roads we have that are deteriorating and sort of get that value for money by doing it. But I always think this is a good example that we did on Broadway, and it's a high volume road, it gets a lot of traffic, and it will stand up. With it, we have a water main that probably will have to be replaced in about 15 years, so this is perfect. It'll have the road last roughly the same time as that water main, and then we can do both at one time later on in the future. Fundamentally, that's all I have, and I guess after, if anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Great presentations, lots of excellent explanations. We are going to take about a 3-minute, 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for the Q&A portion. There is coffee and snacks over on the table over there if you want to grab coffee or use the washroom, and then we will flip the microphone and get everything ready for the Q&A. See you back in a couple minutes. All right, everybody, if you want to grab a seat, we're going to get going with the Q&A portion. Try to be respectful of everybody's time and get everyone out of here in good time today. Yep. All right, so again, the rules are very simple. You don't need to give your name and address. You do have to be respectful and kind to our staff and our council who are here. And that's it. The only other rule is that we're going to give everybody a chance for one question before anybody comes up for a second one. So if you can keep your question to one. I also do want to let you know that we are filming today with Rogers TV. So if that holds you back from wanting to ask a question, I can always come to you in the crowd if you don't want to come up to the mic. So you can raise your hand if that's the case. Otherwise, whoever wants to come first can head on up. All right, ready to go. I love it.
Well, I'm here sort of to speak of the Aquafit experience.
Sure.
At all.
Just step a little closer so we can hear you.
Okay.
Just a little bit. If you just step a little closer,
Okay.
we should be good.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And me coming to speak tonight sort of happened in a moment of clarity that I had when I was waitlisted at the pool for the first time.
Step a little closer again.
Waitlisted for the first time. Okay. So I'd just like to describe what has been going on with Aquafit participants. And this goes back over a period of time. Okay, so I thought very clearly about this. First of all, people who participate in Aquafit are there for medical reasons, a good majority of them. We have to be there, okay? We used to have 55-minute classes at Tony Rose, and those are now 45-minute classes. we used to have more than one aquafit slot time. We are one aquafit slot time of 45 minutes. People have to literally get up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to get into these classes because they are full. They have been full for years, and with one class operating now, it's full beyond belief. People are packed into the new Alder Street pool, okay? So we're waitlisted. That's what happens. Now, I will say that the small piece of the aquafit program with the wait list works. The wait list works, but we've been reduced in amount of time, in number of classes, we're packed in, and I don't see that that is a program that works for a lot of us. There have been a lot of people complaining, talking about all this kind of stuff for quite a while. Okay, so that is our experience. A document that was handed out a while ago by administration for the town said that the expanded 8-lane lap pool and redesigned leisure pool, back up. With the recent reopening of the Alder Street Recreation Center pool, staff are confident that this facility will meet the demands of all aquatic programs. It is certainly not meeting the needs of the aquafit people. Okay, I know there's been problems with lane swim also. I am just standing here speaking about my experience with aquafit, and this has been an experience that has gone on for several years. We have been whittled down, and I think it's time to speak up.
Okay.
So that's why I'm
appreciate
here.
that.
That's
Somebody
why I'm
wanna-
here. How does this program meet our needs? How is it going to change to meet our needs?
Thank you, Shirley. Trust me when I say, good evening, everybody. My name is Sharon Doherty-Gowden. I'm the manager of recreation and events for the town of Orangeville, for those who don't know me. Trust me, I too lose sleep over this. It's something that the team has been looking at, and actually our general manager, Heather Savage, is here this evening, and David Smith. I wrote them a 4-page memo a couple weeks ago because we are looking at how we can address this. First thing first, aquafit instructors are very difficult to come by. We're losing one very shortly to a maternity leave. So we are looking at ways we can facilitate additional classes. Absolutely, with one pool and one tank. Recently, we went from 50 people per class to 60. And there is a variety of things we're looking at for 2025. I will be very honest with you, the changes will also look at fees. Cheryl mentioned earlier our integrated approach to fees, but we're hoping that, well, hope is not a plan. We're planning, where's that coin? We are planning to look at things in a very different way and offer that program and service in a different way than we had before. And it could be something as a pre-registered program. Will mean that the fees may change, but your spot will be guaranteed, and you can come and not get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to pre-register. So there's a variety of things we're looking at some hybrid models. How can we have pre-registration and walk-ins? David and I have had discussions on the old days where you just showed up and there wasn't a waiting list. COVID has changed that most definitely for us. Technology has also changed that. Technology's enhanced opportunities for people to guarantee their spot, but we know the supply and demand, we can't keep up. We're the only pool in Dufferin County, and with that, our staffing is very difficult because there aren't other pools to pull from. So it's becoming very challenging of where do we draw those aquafit instructors from? And we're looking at additional training for our staff in-house. You know Stephanie Lepe, she's our recreation supervisor. We talk about this a lot. So there will be some solutions. I'll come out and talk more with the aquafit participants and make sure to deliver the messaging well in advance.
Thanks, Sharon. Who's up next? Come on up, Chris.
This will be pretty quick. My name's Chris. I'm just wondering what's happening with the current dog park and the new dog park.
Dog park, current
Dog park?
and new
What's happening with the
park.
dog park?
Good evening, everyone. What's happening, the current dog park, that might be more of a planning question, but it is located at the Orangeville Highlands Development Lands, right behind the Orangeville Mall, or the former Orangeville Mall. They are moving along with their site plan application, and once they start to move in, start mobilizing their equipment, then that dog park will be relocated somewhere else. So we've had conversations about where to go. We have pressure tested about 11 different locations and weighted them against variables like how much is it going to cost? How long can we stay there? What is the terrain? Are dogs accepted in this area? Is it a walkable neighborhood? Is it in a neighborhood? So right now, we did have a public meeting about installing in a temporary park behind Tony Rose? McCarthy Street, thank you very much. Worked closely with that neighborhood, heard a lot of great feedback. So we have tried to find alternative solution to that area. The area behind Tony Rose will more than likely be developed into something at some point, just may not be a dog park at this point. So what we're going to do is, you heard it here first, Council, we are going to submit a capital request because we will need additional funding and move the temporary location up to what I think is fondly known as Humberlands. So Veterans Way and north of Hanson Boulevard. There's a lot of space there. There's no residential areas. There's already an entrance, and we think the dogs will like it. Okay?
What's the time frame for the people moving in to construct where the current dog park is?
That's probably a Tim question.
Yeah, it is. The last we heard, it was going to be this spring. So I'm not sure if.
Yeah, I guess with the private sector contractor, we're not sure exactly when they're going to do it. Last they said maybe in the spring they'd start construction, but a lot of it depends on how the market is for housing. They may delay till the fall. They could even delay till 2026. But the latest we've heard, they looked at starting in the spring.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor. And thank you very much for holding these town hall meetings. I find them quite exciting. I just wish there was more people that showed up. My question is accessibility. Now, in the future, in 25, Ontario is supposed to become accessible to all residents. Now, what about the trails? I've asked this in council before, and you have come up with the answer, it's not in the budget. Well, apparently next year, it's supposed to be in the budget to open up some of these trails with people with accessibility issues. Now, is that going to happen?
Rick, would you mind explaining to me what do you envision these trails being opened up and being accessible? And then I'm going to try and answer your question. Clarity.
A simple thing like a plow.
Oh, you want them maintained?
Maintained.
Okay.
Now, I'm not looking for all the trails to be opened up. I don't think it's necessary, but at least one or two where people with accessibility issues can go for a walk or use their walker or being pushed in a wheelchair. And according to the provincial government, that is supposed to happen next year.
They've changed the date on that.
The trails are supposed to be accessible as well.
Yeah, we're just going to double check, but I think that date's been pushed off. But so you're right, there's $1.1 million in the capital budget. It's reoccurring year over year to do trails, to complete the trail from the north to south, from Town Line to Veterans Way. Okay, thank you. And so right now we're working on an area that's running through 3 sensitive areas with CBC, waiting to get their approval, and then we're going to continue right till Town Line. That's what that capital budget is for. As far as maintenance, there are, I believe, 7 or 8 areas of trails in Orangeville that are maintained because they're a part of the sidewalk system. So it means that when you're on sidewalks, anything that we've maintained, if it includes a trail as part of that sidewalk system, it currently is being maintained. If we were to go and increase the service level and maintain and plow between November and say March throughout the winter months, that would require an additional capital funding in our operating budget. So that's something that is put forward to council, but at this point, it's not on the radar. There are other higher capital project needs in order to meet that. So if we change the service level, there's going to be some money attached to it, and it has to be approved.
You know, I've been told in the past that the snowplow vehicles are too heavy for a lot of these trails, because the trails aren't, the asphalt isn't that thick. Now, I've seen the town with Kubotas, little Kubotas running around, and why can't a plow be put on those things?
And again, it's just now we're increasing service levels. We have service level standards right now, or at least we're setting them, saying this is what we've been doing, this is how we can maintain it, this is where our operating budget is, this is where our staffing complement is, and this is what we can do. That is an increase in service level, will require additional funding. So it will just all come down to budget.
Well, I've got an extra $20 on me.
And it's not gonna cut it. But
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Rick. Anyway, who's up next? James, do you want me to come to you? I'll go to James and then we'll come to you, okay?
Mine's actually towards Tim. I was just wondering, my street, Carlton, has been on the list for over 15 years to be redone, and it is horrible. It's brutal to go around the bend, that bend part, basically the center part of our road. And when I have a sensitive back, my wife actually has to go over it slowly, or I have to drive over it slowly, because it can be brutal if my back is aggravated. And that road, that section has been bad. But anyways, I'm just wondering what, on your list of roads and stuff like that, how long is it going to be on that list and get deteriorating further and further and further until something is done, instead of seeing all these other nice roads be resurfaced? Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Rick. I'll have to check. I don't have the copy of the list here with me, just to see where it is. I know it was in the next 3 years, but I don't know if it was in 2025 or 2026. So I'll have to check on it, and then I can get back to you on that.
Come on up.
Okay, it's about the Alder Street pool.
Just come on up to the mic, sorry. We just want to make sure everybody can hear.
It's about the Alder Street pool again. I was wondering if we could have hooks in the change rooms, because all we have right now are little tiny lockers, and pretty soon we're gonna be wearing winter clothes, and we don't have enough space in a little locker for those things.
That sounds like a pretty easy fix.
Thank you.
I will look into that for sure.
Thank you. That sounds like a very easy fix, Sharon. We'll get after it.
Take Rick's 20
That's right. $20 to Sharon so you can buy some hooks. Who's up next? Come on up. Yeah, come on up.
My name's Don Jackson, roads. So going west, where the construction's going on at Diane Drive and the new entrance to the Avalon, is that sort of staggered intersection gonna get the traffic lights? So I see that thing becoming an accident looking for a place to happen.
Yeah, actually, we're doing a transportation master plan right now, looking at future traffic volumes and needs for signals. At this time, I don't think there's one anticipated, but our study will be done in the springtime, and it'll evaluate needs for signals. I know at one time there was talk about Preston coming down to meet at Broadway and having signals as part of that work, but it wasn't extended. We'll find out more in the spring when we get the study done, but I don't anticipate signals would go in there yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Right now, it's a mess out there.
It's hard with the one lane. I know it's a bit
Well,
challenging.
it's also, you got two signs. One says no left turn, right where Diane Drive is. One says no left turn 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So which one is it?
And the construction should be done in the next couple of days. I think they were looking at having it done before the end of the month. So once that's done, the road will be opened up, and it should improve an awful lot.
But it was no left turn, and then they adjusted it to say between 10 and 6 when the high volume was. It was to try and stop the backup that was happening on Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Come on up, Noel.
Good evening. My name is Noel Ramsey. I was wondering for purchasing advantages, I don't know if it's possible or if it's been considered, when you come to things like buying asphalt, concrete, or vehicles, has anybody ever looked at forming some kind of cooperative or whatever with the other counties or other municipalities to like gain some leverage on buying power?
Well, since this is my fourth week on the job, I will take that back. We do have a procurement staff member that kind of manages these sorts of things, so I'll confer with him to see if this has been looked at in the past for the town of Orangeville. I know those I know those types of cooperatives do exist in other municipalities. Whether the town of Orangeville has looked at that itself, I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even have to be close, right? I mean, you could do it with Aurelia or somebody else.
So, yeah, great question, and we can circle back. There are organizations that we belong to that we do pool. Vehicles typically is one that is a government purchasing power. There's organizations like Canoe that we participate in that help with that. So definitely we do. And we're always on the lookout on how we can do that. That's more formal. More informally, we can be partnering more with our other municipalities, like local rather than provincial, to see if there's some efficiencies there.
We have looked at it for fire. It is a bit of a challenge with fire because of the types of trucks and timing of getting trucks and differences between bunker equipment and radio systems. It's unfortunately not worked with fire, but I know that was one that our local fire chiefs came together and said, is there anything that we could do? And unfortunately, it just, timing never worked out, but it was something that they did look at for fire. I saw two hands. Yeah, come on up.
Matthew Smith. It might be too late for this year's budget, but I would like to consider or put forward the idea of a sidewalk on Commerce Road between Centennial and the catwalk on Lawrence to help serve the people that attend the food bank. Because I was doing a different role at the food bank recently, and I was basically just doing the checkout person, weighing all the bags and helping people load their bags into their vehicles, or just kind of help them along their way. And the number of people that arrived on foot, either through transit or walking the whole distance, I believe it outnumbered the actual amount of people that drove there. So to have a sidewalk on Commerce Road would be a big benefit to those using the food bank, especially in February when they have to walk in the middle of the road because the sides of the road aren't plowed and there's snow everywhere else. So I don't know if that can be considered for this year's budget, but maybe in the future that's something that should be considered.
Thanks, Matthew. And we do have a missing link sidewalk project, and we do install sidewalks. I checked where that one is, but I don't know if it's on the list for next year, but it's a good point. We'll keep it in mind for future years and have it done. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on up, Christine. Come on up.
I don't know if this is the appropriate place to.
Can you step a little closer to the mic so everybody can hear?
I don't know if this is the appropriate place to talk about this, but there is a problem with the ODSS, and there's nobody coming to move the cars. There's cars, the parents are parking all along the street where it says no stopping. And we can't get up our street at 3 o'clock every afternoon.
Just during pickup time? Like
Yes,
that's when it's bad,
yes,
is during drop
yes.
off and pickup?
And they're parking in no parking spaces, and there's gonna be an accident or a child hurt. So I don't know who to talk
That's
to.
something we can share with bylaw, if we can let bylaw know tomorrow
Yes,
maybe?
thank you so much.
Thank you. Who's up next? You already had a turn, so we're gonna go back. Come on up, Peggy. We'll come to you again, Rick.
Hey, so this is a question probably for you guys. I was wondering where we were at with the Orangeville, the railway lands, the sum of money that we got from the sale. You were gonna do some public input on what we were gonna do with that.
Yeah, so currently that money is all sitting in investments. The open timing, we talked about timing, I don't know where we're at with it. Maybe David's the right one to answer that one. When it comes to timing of community consultation.
Yeah, so I'll back up. That money is sitting in investments by ORDC, which is a separate corporation. You know, the municipality is a single shareholder, but it's being held by ORDC. There is some additional work that needs to be reviewed for the property before that money is released to the municipality. And when it is, we'll start a very robust community consultation. My hope is that we would do that in 2025 over the next year.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anybody who hasn't asked a question yet, who wants to ask one? Yeah, come on up.
The new crossing at Wellington and Broadway, excellent. Why don't we do the same at Mill Street and Broadway? Arguably the busiest pedestrian crossing intersection in Orangeville. So as it is now, pedestrians have to hit the button and wait, it seems a minute or two at least. Why don't we, you know, it's downtown Orangeville, why don't we prioritize that for pedestrians?
Yeah, we can look at it, but a lot of it goes towards keeping the cars moving too. It's a busy road, so it's a balance between the pedestrians and the vehicles. I think if you had it stop all the time, the lights are timed, so even the one at John Street is timed with the one at First Street, so it tries to give you a green wave of traffic. So to stop one, it ruins the interconnect on them all, so it has to be timed.
But the other one, the new one, isn't timed with anything.
No, the new one's further out. It's not in the middle of all the existing signals. That's the difference.
And it would be less frequently used than the one at Mill Street.
Yeah, I know, I realize that, but at some point we gotta prioritize pedestrian crossings over keeping vehicles moving, shouldn't we?
I think in that area it's a real balance. You do have a high volume of traffic. I think if you stop the traffic and you don't have that flow going, it's gonna be a bogged down area for everybody. So I think right now people may have to wait for a minute for it to change, just like people at John Street might have to wait a minute. It's just part of the way of having the road function properly.
And my second part to this, the new crossing for the rail trail, which isn't put in yet, but at Broadway and Blind Line, where that rail trail crosses, are you gonna force rail trail traffic to cross at the light at Blind Line? Or is it gonna have its own dedicated crossing?
With that crossing, it'll be at Blind Line. So it'll bring everybody down. That's why they've extended the bridge
Yes,
down
I've
to
seen
Blind
that.
Line, so people can cross at Blind Line.
But why?
Because you can't have two intersections so close together. You're gonna have traffic queued into each of them. It'll be unsafe.
Yeah, but again, you're gonna prioritize vehicle crossing traffic over pedestrian crossings. Whereas
it's
the
more-
Caledon Trailway are doing the opposite. Caledon Trailway are prioritizing trail users instead of car traffic.
Yeah, I'm not sure what section of the Caledon Trail you're talking about, but in that area, you can't have two intersections so close together. You're gonna have a major safety issue. And that's where we're prioritizing safety.
Okay. And just to echo off what Rick was saying, I think maybe what he's referring to is the sections of trail, the George Douglas Trail is a good example where there's a lot of root heaves and it's quite lumpy, and somebody spray painted them all as a warning, but they're quite rough out there and wouldn't be accessible, presumably.
Okay.
Maybe.
Take that one away, Heather. What was the name of it? Sorry?
The George Douglas, it's George Douglas Trail, right? The one that runs behind Canadian Tire and then all the way along to Rotary?
Okay, Canadian Tire to Rotary.
Yeah, it's uneven, and there's a lot of root heaves and, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, anybody who hasn't asked a question? Then I'll go back to my two eager ones who keep putting their hands up. Who want to go?
Hey, this is a question regarding Tony Road. Have any measures been taken to maintain the condition of the pool when it was closed from further deterioration?
Heather? Got the mic. Thank you.
So technical question, so you're testing my technical knowledge, but I do know that the facility staff have told me that they have done preventative maintenance. They went in day 1, day 3, week 1, week 2. They're now in the monitoring stage. They removed the water from the pool, assessing the condition of the tank. They've done stuff in the filter room. They've had fans in there. They've adjusted however they can. We're going into cooler weather, so it's better because we do not have a humidification unit there. Monitoring the air temperatures and doing what they can to track it, to monitor it, to make sure it's doing as best as it can.
But it's not deteriorating. They're monitoring it to make sure it doesn't deteriorate.
It's a 51-year-old building. It's deteriorating every day, whether we have water in the pool or not. But yes, they're doing what they're doing. They're taking all the measures, whatever they can. We also have contracted companies that come in and they check our HVAC systems on a monthly basis. They check for rodents on a monthly basis. So we do have those contracted services helping us to maintain the asset.
David has something out there too.
Thanks for that, Heather, and she's 100% right. I will add, I was at Tony Rose a week or so ago, a month or whenever, we drained the pool. A week or so ago, we had 2 feet of water in the pool. So the issues at Tony Rose are much more significant than just an air handling. So that's water coming in from the outside, coming up into the pool. So it's as Heather said, it's a very old facility that is in really challenging state.
Okay, Rick?
I'll let Noah go first.
Oh, no, okay.
He's ahead of me.
I got a couple more anyway. Fourth, so make sure I got the choice. First Street and 4th Avenue. I raised this issue over, I think, 6 months ago on council. The 2 new developments that have been in there, one's been in there for about 7 years now, and this latest one has been in there for about a year.
The townhomes there?
Yeah, the townhouses. So we've gained about 90 residents there, and their driveways come right out at 1st Street and 4th Avenue. And the only safe crossing spot, if you go down a little bit farther, is whatever that road is called at Best Buy, and go back to 2nd Avenue. So you've got a long stretch of road there. Then you've got the outflow from the high school and the kids, and the subdivisions back in Sunset Boulevard and Sunset, as well as Forest Glen back in there. Everything comes out onto 1st Street from Speed Street. Okay? That new development, you've got 90 residents coming out in that small section now. When I raised this last time, they said that the previous traffic studies took this all into account, that there wasn't a need for a stop sign or a stop light or a crosswalk. Has there been any reconsideration? Because it's chaos there now, and the more houses that get filled, like I'm guessing it's about 1/5 filled, it's gonna be, like come 3 o'clock, 3 to 5 o'clock, it's gonna be chaos, especially in the morning as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure of the chaos, if it's due to turning movements or what it is, but one of the things we're doing, I mentioned before, we're looking at doing a transportation master plan to look at the needs for the town for signals, turn lanes, widenings. One of the areas we've identified is at Bead Street and 1st Street, the option to put a traffic signal there to provide pedestrian crossing. It would also give a big break for traffic coming in and out of those developments and people leaving from the high school. So that'll be part of the study, which we expect to have completed in the spring. We've included in the proposed budget for 2025 funds to be able to put signals in there if the warrants are met.
Okay, I don't know how this works, but in those the residential complexes, I believe they're private roads, is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so the first development has stop signs coming out. The new development doesn't. So when you're coming on 4th Avenue, onto 1st Street, you have to stop and wait for traffic, gap traffic to pull out. You get cars coming out of that new residence without stopping. There is no sign there. They're just pulling out as on their own will onto 1st Street.
Yeah, I guess with that, it's a private driveway, so just like your driveway at home doesn't have a stop sign on it, normally when you have a driveway, people stop before they go.
There's 45 houses in there. Like
Maybe that's something to take to planning and see if there's.
Like the only thing that stops me from driving straight out, I drive right out like willy-nilly all the time I want, but I make sure there's no traffic there.
Hopefully other people do too, but we'll take it back and talk to them.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Noel. Rick, and then Don. Yeah, come on up.
My question would be to Tim. Now, you mentioned the road resurfacing on Broadway. Now, the Broadway bricks was done, and there were truck signs put up, no heavy trucks. And all day long, you see heavy trucks on Broadway. Just when is some enforcement going to be done?
Yeah, I guess it's something we'll follow up with bylaw. Typically.
No, it's got nothing to do with bylaws, it's police.
Okay, it's police, but I guess part of it too could be local delivery, local builders, so people are coming in that way. We'll follow up with.
Not with highway units, they're just going through town from the industrial section, or going to, or coming from. See it all day long, and I'm sure
Police
the
do enforcement on that because they do pull over. We talked about that in our police services board recently, because there has been enforcement on the heavy trucks that are using routes that they're not supposed to. They have done some follow-up.
Well, when was the last ticket handed out?
I don't know.
I know, like, it's ridiculous. You have all these rules and regulations and no enforcement. And it's about everything. It's not just about the trucks, it's about stop signs, it's about speeding, it's about going through red lights, it's just on and on and on. And this is all day long, all the time. When are we gonna get some enforcement?
We do have enforcement. The OPP can't be everywhere at once, and they do targeted road safety checks. They do it based on complaints. They will pick an area where they're gonna focus on speeding based on complaints that come in. Same with stop signs, same with those things. But we only have so many officers in town, and they can't be patrolling everything at once. But they do a great job of enforcement overall. Come on up.
Thank you. Transportation again, and this might be bylaw police enforcement, and the new crosswalk at 3rd Street, Broadway, is right where you have 3rd Street, just a little past, is excellent. My question is, when are they going to enforce the no left turn sign?
We've had we've had lots of comments about that one.
When you come up 3rd Street, I'm gonna be very upfront. I look right up there and I look to see, is anybody waiting to turn left? I got 1 car, I got 2 cars, I got 3 cars. I'm gonna turn and I'm gonna go up by Dodson McNair and cross by the old hospital because I'm not getting hung up there. And there's been no anything from what I've seen. So I'm just raising that point.
My opinion, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but my opinion is that it would help if we had a sign that was across the road at that, when you come up 3rd Street and you look straight ahead, that it would be right there. I know that there's one on 3rd Street now, but there's not one on the Broadway side.
Well, we put one in advance of the intersection because there was the issue with people getting up there and then trying to turn. So we put one back 300 or 400 feet to give people notice ahead of time. So maybe it's something we'll take back with the police to see if they can do some more spot checks in that area.
Yeah, because that other thing is that sign that's back there, if you look at it carefully, it's hiding behind a tree. There's a tree blocking that sign. So you're coming up there, you go, you don't know those 2 signs are there.
3.
Yeah, 3 signs.
Three. There you go. So if you don't know they're there because they're blocked out by a tree.
We take a look at it to see if there's trees that need to be trimmed, we can do that.
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions? Yeah, James, I'll come to you.
I don't know who can answer this. I was just wondering, when we contract out like roads, I'll give a company for example, say Orangeville, we have them come and do the roads, and if they do it improperly, are we holding them accountable and have them to come back and fix something at their own expense? The Alder Arena, like the pool, that type of thing. Are we actually holding these companies accountable for their lack of, I guess? It was just a curious question.
I guess I'll take the first part. For roads, we typically have a holdback to ensure the work is done. So quite often, even we'll put the top asphalt the following year, but we have a 10% holdback to make sure any deficiencies are done. I can't speak to the alder pool, but for roads, we do have a holdback and we make sure they come back to do the work.
David said that.
I would have answered that question by saying yes.
Perfect. Any other questions? Noel's got one more, Matthew's got one more. Matthew, you come up first, and then Noel.
I think this one's for Tim, so I apologize. Has there been any progress on implementing the on-demand transit system? I know it's been discussed quite a bit. I think there's supposed to have been even an 18-month pilot program that's supposed to have been started in 2022. I don't think that's ever been started, so I want to know if there's any movement in that area.
Yeah, right now, I guess the pilot project and no work's been done on the on-demand transit. It's something we'll look at for the future. We have the fare-free transit right now, but the on-demand's paused, and it'll be something to be looked at in the future.
Okay, great, thank you.
For our Parks and Rec expenditures, I know that some of the municipalities pay, or we charge them a certain amount, I believe, a small fee or something. Is that correct? There is a recovery fee from like Mono and Amaranth?
Who use our recreation facilities?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not the users, but the actual municipality.
No. So I'm looking, my understanding is we charge the users, and in some municipalities, they can go back to their home municipality and get reimbursed. It is something 100% I have approached with my colleagues across the county. The challenge we have, and I'll try and explain it, and maybe I'll explain it well, but it's clear in my head, is when you charge the single person an additional fee, you're charging them for use, which is part of the bill. What we're not charging them for is the capacity to offer the service, which is a much larger charge. So when you get your hydro bill, you have a fee for delivery, which is the capacity of hydro to deliver the service, and then you get a bill for the amount of usage. My thought is that we need to charge municipalities that are using our facilities for the capacity to deliver the service, which is much higher than the individual user fee. So does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, you're leading into my question, because that really wasn't my question. My question.
Well, that's because I'm in your head.
So you're kind of going down the road I was thinking. That is that let's just, for argument's sake, that we're spending $2 million a year on facilities for Parks and Rec. Let's just use Alder, for example. And it costs, I don't know, let's say $3 a visit to go in there, but we're charging non-residents $4 a visit. It's a nominal percentage increase, I think 15 or 25% or something like that. But we know that if you take out all the usage events that we have, all the residents, all non-residents, and you break it down, and look at all the user fees, we don't recover the costs. It costs us more. Those costs are spread across all the taxpayers just in our municipality. So there's three things we can do. Status quo, which is we're paying for the overhead for other municipalities to use our facilities, or we really go back to those other municipalities and maybe ask them to kick in $200,000–300,000 a year, and they can use their residents can use it just like ours can. Or we find out how much it costs to actually use it every time, and saying, my wife here only pays $3.75 to go swimming, but if you want to come here, it's $15 if you don't live in Orangeville.
So you're exactly right.
Go for it.
Or there's
Either way,
another option? Okay.
the taxpayers of Orangeville have to be compensated for someone else using. It's like somebody saying, borrow my car, but they're only paying me the gas. They're not paying for the overhead of the car.
Yeah, so no, we are in complete alignment. I'm just gonna expand. The $3 that you said that the resident would pay is only paying, that's a user fee. It's not what your tax bill is paying to support recreation, which is the capacity, which is a lot more than that. Right. Currently, we're charging other municipalities that user fee. We need to charge them a lot more for that to provide that capacity. So we're saying exactly the same thing. You've given some options. That's what's in my head. We haven't approached this with council yet. I've spoken with my peers across the county, and most of them get it. go, yeah, that makes sense. If we're providing regional services, everybody should be ponying up for that.
Yeah, I don't think, charging someone $15 is gonna fly very long, because
No,
their friends
no.
in Orangeville will be.
But see, the other problem with the approach is that it puts our staff in a challenging situation of challenging people where they live, of them saying, well, my cousin lives here. You wouldn't imagine the number of people that live in East Garifraxis that think they live in Orangeville, or in Mono that think that they live in Orangeville when it comes to the fee. So ideally, we'd like to take that away and just have the municipalities cut us a check, much like they do in the library service, cut us a check on behalf of the municipality. But then, on the other side is then everybody's equal. So our residents don't get may not get early registration because they're contributing an equal share. So it's complex, it's on our radar. It is something that when we look at the cost of services, whether it's library, recreation, fire, if we're providing those services to other municipalities and their residents, they need to pay their fair share.
And it is something that this council has been talking about throughout this term of council. A good example is Tony Rose, when we talked about having to close Tony Rose and the work that was going to be done in the background to figure out next steps for Tony Rose. One of the things that came out of the motion there was this council authorizing me to go have conversations with neighboring mayors to say, how do we get together and maybe we look at tearing down Tony Rose and building a regional facility that's better and offers everything that every municipality can pitch in on. Like, that's one of the conversations on the table, because we know that our neighboring municipalities have to contribute to the capital projects as well. Another good example is fire services. We contract out our services to a number of different municipalities for fire services, and they do pay us for those services, but now we have to build a new fire station, and we need to ensure that the neighbors that we serve are also contributing to that capital cost.
Could you consider a county fire service rather than a town fire service?
Well, we're talking about that at the county. We just did a regional review of fire services, and we're going to be discussing it further before the end of this year to see if there's any desire amongst the other municipalities to go with a fully regional system, whether it be that the county takes it over or that the town of Orangeville takes it over for everybody. Yeah, so there are discussions happening about those things exactly.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, come on up.
Matthew looks at me in surprise, like, whoa. But yes, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon of Parks and Rec with my friends over on this side, because I actually used to teach swimming and teach aquafit. No, I don't plan on doing it again.
I thought you were
I'm
just
sorry,
signing up
I'm
for a
sorry.
job.
I'm sorry. Sorry, but I loved aquafit when I did it, and I definitely want to get back into it, but unfortunately, like my new friends over here, I can't book into it.
If you could teach it, they would come.
So I just want to echo the thought of, I love your idea of potentially doing a regional, turning this into a regional building and potentially new pool, new facilities, and hopefully creating new opportunities for residents as well as potential future staffing.
No, appreciate that feedback very much. Thank you. Yes, okay.
I'd like to take a step back on Tony Rose, okay? We've heard some new information tonight. There has been a lot of discussion in the past about how much it would cost to fix it. And a document that the town produced gave two options. One was to replace the filtration system, replace the dehumidification system for $1.1 million. Like I say, we've learned more information tonight. My question is, and there's sort of three parts to it, A, B, and C, is there going to be a financial assessment of all aspects of Tony Rose, what it would cost? That's the first question.
That's
Second question, are we on track for the report that is supposed to tell us what the final recommendation is? Are we on track? understand the process.
Sure.
For sure.
Sure. So we,
We've built into the 2025, you have a very difficult job when it comes to budget time. I don't envy your positions. There is a lot of high priority needs to maintain our assets, and Tim and I duke it out every day. But there is a request in the budget to do building assessments on a lot of our facilities. So I'll back it up. Legislatively, we were required to report on all of our non-core assets. So a non-core asset is a recreation center. A core asset, which is me, and then Tim is the core asset. So he had to get all his stuff in 2 years ago. We had to get our stuff in this past year. It says this is how much the municipality is responsible for. This is how much we own. This is how much we're valued at for our non-core. It is significant. But with that value comes a larger ticket, a price tag that says, all right, you need this much over the next 5-10 years to be able to maintain those assets. So as we work through those details, we will be developing our 10-year capital plan more than we ever have in the past. So in order to feed that capital program, we are requesting to do building assessments. We've done some structural assessments both at Alder and at Tony Rose. That's telling us, what's the integrity of the ice, the floor out there and the walls. We're going to go a little bit deeper. So we are determining, your first question was yes. Second one, what's the plan for Tony Rose? So in that report you're referring to, the idea was to, originally we had $160,000 in the budget to hire a consultant to tell us what to do with Alder and Tony Rose over the next 10 to 20, 30 years. My team and I said, you know what, we have a few consultant reports. We have a Parks and Rec master plan. We have a facility needs assessment. We have structural assessments. Let us take that information. We'll aggregate the information and figure out what's the baseline? What have the consultants told us? What is council priorities? What has the community told us up until right now? So the next step with Tony Rose and Alder is to say, review everything that we know right now. This is what we know. Whether it's true or not, or whether we want it, we don't know that yet, but this is what we know based on all of those assessments, master plans, and strategies. Our intent is to deliver that information to council. At that time, council, I'm hoping, will not make any other decision, but yes, continue with the process. We're not going to ask for any more. We're not going to move a project along to say, all right, we want to build this. What I'd like to do is let council know this is where we're at. This is our baseline. Now, please, can I have more time and maybe a little bit of money to go out to the community to pressure test these ideas? So community, what do you think about everything we know and that the consultants told us? A lot of other community members have already fed into some of these strategies. So for example, the Parks and Rec master plan says decommission Tony Rose B and add another arena to Alder. So somebody has told us that went to a recommendation to council. Council said, in theory, all right, we can look further into it. We know that. We're going to now go back out to the community and say, what do you think about that idea? Do you have a better idea? Do you have a different idea? We need time to do the community consultation to pressure test all the recommendations we have right now. Then we would maybe, instead of hiring a consultant, hire an architect to develop some conceptual drawings to say, all right, let's mind map this. What would it look like for the town of Orangeville and for Tony Rose and for Alder over the next 30 years? And then we can see storyboards and we'll put them in the lobby and we'll say, do you agree with this? Is this right? Because this is what they're telling us we should do. Now, what do you think? Then we take all that information and we go back and we deliver it in a nice, neat package to council and say, all right, consultants told us this, staff input is this, our budget is telling us this, structural assessments are telling us this, the community's telling us this, here's some recommendations as to what we should actually do. We need time to be able to develop that plan. It may go closer, it may go quicker if we spend the $160 on a consultant because they have all the time in the world. We do not, but we don't think that is good value of the money. We already know what we want. I think the community already knows what they want, and I think council is very supportive of what the community wants. So that's the plan.
So this isn't specific to Tony Rose, so I'm going to preface it by saying that. You're going to think it is, but it's not, okay? Like it's a message I think we all need to hear. So I'm going to put one of you on the spot. This morning we were talking about 2024 capital budget requests, and it was 120 million. It's about $120 million of staff saying this is what we need to do in 2025. $120 million. And what's their available funding? Is it $3 million? A couple weeks on the job, so so from levy funding, it's about $3 million.
I still got $20.
Still got it. I'm gonna take it. So the reality of all of these things, Heather's answer was exactly right. And we need to talk to the bank to say, what can we afford? What can we reasonably afford in our community at the tax levels people are willing to pay? We hear every day from people that with their interest, with their aquafit or their trail users or all different areas. The challenge for our I was going to say colleagues, they're not our colleagues, for our governors, is to take that $120 million of requests and put it down into $3 million. And we're going to do work and we're going to do all sorts of things. That's what we do. But the reality is that expectations are so high in so many areas, and the reality of our ability to pay for these things is not. We have 50-year-old wells. So it's challenges. It's why their job is so difficult. It's why I would never run to be an elected official at the local level or any level. But so it's a challenge, and we have people here that are very engaged in our community and how our community operates and stuff. And I applaud you for coming out to these. Most of our residents aren't. Most of our residents, don't understand or don't fully grasp the challenges that we wrestle with every day. So I'm not saying specific for Tony Rose. I'm saying for all of the requests, they have an incredibly difficult job to prioritize requests. And with service levels increasing, with issues like homelessness, with provincial and federal funding being cut down, it's more and more challenging. We need to be able to responsibly maintain the infrastructure that we have and responsibly maintain the infrastructure that we build in future. And if we don't have a plan for that, because hope is not a plan, we need to be very cautious about future investments. So that's a little bit sobering. There's free Timbits.
The bank has their hand up, if you don't
There's
mind.
coffee.
The bank has their hand up.
I'm just gonna, maybe I wasn't very clear today in our meetings. So some of the numbers there, the gap isn't quite that large. We have other funding sources. The $3.5 million that David was referring to was like the direct funding from tax levy to cover capital projects in a given year. We do have other sources of funding, as video had shown. We have development charges, we have grants and subsidies and all that stuff. So we do have other sources of funding for our capital program. It's not just tax levy funded. However, there is a gap. It's not as big as maybe.
It's still pretty significant, though.
It's still fairly.
60 million, 80 million?
It'll depend on the asset management plans that are going to come forward, because we know that the projects that we have in our capital program actually don't reflect everything that we need to do. So there's the planning gap, and then there's also a funding gap.
I'd like to make a few points, ask another question. People that approach Alder Street, okay, like first of all, the pool is beautiful. People are enjoying it, even though we can't have the access that we'd like. But a lot of people have commented on the amount of planting and outside work that is being done around the building. And that is something that has to be maintained every year. And this is another small example in addition to what I've just said. When, there was a raised bed put in at the front of Alder Street. And it was planted out, it's got made of big blocks. Sandy Brown was mayor then. His comment when he saw that was, who approved that? All this stuff needs to be paid for up front and maintained. So we're talking about a lot of things that we see being done that perhaps could be done to a lesser extent.
But we do try and build a complete community, right? So we could invest all of our property tax money just into roads, but nobody's gonna come to Orangeville and go, look at these great roads, right?
Absolutely.
We need to have the rest of our stuff too.
Oh,
So
yes.
parks is important and recreation's important.
Yes.
Investments in all of those things.
But there is a
And-
level where you don't have to go.
But when we do the garden program, for example, we budget our gardens and we buy flowers and plantings for our gardens based on the number of gardens that we have. And we do have park staff whose job is, horticulture and to go and visit the gardens.
Absolutely.
So when we do plant additional gardens, it is for a purpose. There's a reason that they're being planted, and they are budgeted for as part of the budget process. So I'm surprised to hear that the former mayor said where did the budget come from, because it would have been approved by council, because it would have been a capital project that came through.
Well, the
as part of
comment
it.
was, who approved that one?
Right. So it would have been council, whether it was his council or the previous council, it was part of a capital project that was done.
That was the comment.
Yeah. No,
Anyway,
understood.
this is what we see and we're commenting on as we go into the Alder Street building. So I just wanted to let you know that's sort of the mindset of people. Now, we need money. I appreciate that. I appreciate the funding gap. The Railway Corporation, the money that's sitting in there, how can that be speeded up to possibly become more available for what the town's needs are?
It is being utilized right now because there is interest that's being collected
Yes.
off of the investments, and that is automatically transferred over to the town of Orangeville. But there is a legal process that has to wrap up with that organization before those funds can be transferred. And part of it is because the sale was with Peel, and there's holdback times and legal things that have to happen before that next step can happen.
So conceivably, how long could it be before that money is released?
It will likely be in 2025 that money and the lands.
I would just caution that, yes, in theory, there's all sorts of complexities, and this is where we get into trouble. We'll say, hey, we'll open Hanson next year, and we can't. So my sense is with that, we will advance it as quickly as possible. We are reviewing environmental issues on the property, potential environmental issues. If there's environmental issues, it could be a decade. So, it's a process that we need to follow. We follow it, we work well, making sure that we're protecting the community. We're not looking at this as something that we can hurry. My head is it'll be next year, but it may not be. And I don't want you to come back next year and say, well, you said it was last year.
Well, that I can appreciate.
Yeah.
But
Well, and quite honestly, right
So-
now, it's making us money anyway, so being in investments is a good
Yeah.
place for it right now.
Yeah, in fact, our finance team would probably say, never spend money, live off the interest.
I can
Yeah.
appreciate that, but there's a balance.
Yeah, for sure there is.
Yeah, and that's why there will be community consultation done before that money's touched at all, when it does get transferred into the town. But until then, that interest will continue to support the investments that we're making in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Noel? Oh, no, come on up, you didn't ask a question yet, so you get to come before Noel.
So the question is, with the older buildings, the older infrastructure, and this is probably part of the environmental thing, I don't know, and that's why I want to know, is mold or asbestos addressed in environmental issues with regards to older infrastructure? Like, I'm thinking of the age of Tony Roads. Is that something that would be?
Yeah, definitely. We're required to do inspections to make sure that any contaminant is identified. Things like asbestos, you can have it as long as it's not disturbed, but we do need to know where it is, and if we do need to disturb it, then there's a protocol that we use to safely manage that. And the same with mold. We do testing on occasion. We do find mold, we address it. Sometimes you don't find it, like in your house, until it's late.
Okay, Noel had a question and James had a question, and then I'm gonna just check, is there anybody else who has a question? Because we're getting close to the end, so we're gonna wrap up. So Noel, James, Rick, anybody else? We're good? Okay, so after Noel, James, and Rick, we will wrap up for tonight.
Okay, so we've been in Orangeville for 10 years now, and I've I've been heavily involved with council. When I say heavily, like I've been attending council meetings when it comes to budget time through those 10 years. And when you said that we've got this huge gap, you know, like 120 or 103 million, whatever, it's huge.
I was correct.
Right, but I would think that when you're doing your budget, you always do like your budget, then you do a 5-year outlook and you do a 10-year outlook. If I go back 10 years, I would think that for even this building and even the new Alder Street pool, you've got a lifespan, and you know that that Alder Street pool, something will have to be done in 50 years. Now that's way out, but I would think that when we moved to Orangeville 10 years ago, someone here, not here, but in town would have known that the life cycle of these wells is coming up in 2022, in 2023, and 2024. And I'm wondering, through all these 5-year plans and 10-year plans, how the hell do we get ourselves into a position when there's this massive gap?
Every municipality in Ontario is in the same situation, and there's a variety of reasons for that. And yes, staff do their best. We are getting better. We're getting more sophisticated. We have better tools. We have better estimates. There's so many factors that go into it, and we will continue to get better. In fact, the province is, as Heather said, is mandating municipalities to do better planning, asset management. So we are doing that. We also need council to support it. We also need taxpayers to understand the cost of these things. We don't have the money, these projects get pushed out, and they get pushed out, and they get pushed out, and they get pushed out. So it's a balancing act. Our finance staff are smart and trained and educated, and are leading us and guiding us to get better over time. You heard them speak. We're developing a long-range financial plan. There's 6 chapters or eight chapters of that. Reserves, reserve strategies, and investment, all sorts of different ways that we can improve our financial health, and we're working towards that.
So just to finish my question, just specifically the wells and the pumps and the towers and stuff like that, did we know 2, 3, 5 years ago that 2024 we were going to have all these infrastructure issues? Not the cost of it, actually just have the issues with those items.
I can't comment on what we may. None of us were here 3 years ago, no. But we do have a plan. We have developed a plan. We're active on our water in particular to increase our capacity. So you've heard staff, we joke, because I use the term hope is not a plan. We need to have plans in place, and we're building this inventory of plans to help us get on track. So in 10 years ago, they knew the well was 40 years old. 20 years ago, they knew it was 30 years old. We know it's 50 years old, and it deserves and requires more attention. We have a number of wells, so Tim and his staff are developing or have developed that plan to replace them responsibly and as quickly as possible. We are doing a water study, a water rate study, to make sure that the fees that we're collecting can finance the cost of the service.
Thank you, Noel. I'm going to turn to James now.
I actually don't know who can answer this question. I don't know if Dave can, or Sharon, or Tim. It's actually in regards to like parking for like at Alder Arena. For the accessible parking that's so far away from the building itself. I don't know who designed that and came up with that little concoction. But I'm wondering, are we going to redesign the parking to make it a little bit more easier for people to get to the building? Because I know for myself, it's incredibly hard for me to get to Alder Arena.
Heather will answer. I will just say that whatever the design was met the building code requirements at the time, and maybe not best user needs, but would have met any legislation requirements at the time.
And just to add, there is a capital project for the Alder Street Recreation Center parking lot. It is now slated for 2026. So it's not something we're gonna, 2027. So there's 2 ways we would address it. One, through looking at what the future plans of the facility are, because it's not enough to just go and resurface the parking lot and move it closer. I don't know if that would work. I think we have to change the whole frontage of that space. But when we do community consultations, bring that up saying parking is an issue, it gets in there as a point and we can make recommendations based on that.
That's pretty good, Cheryl, that you knew that it was 2027, like just like that. Oh, Rebecca, good, nicely, well done. Okay, Rick, last question.
I'm good.
Oh, you're good, okay.
The question
Any
is-
last question of the night then? Rick gave up his spot. We're good? Okay, I want to,
I actually had a question for Debbie, but
oh, she'll be back, I'm sure.
I'm good. I'll
Okay, we'll talk after. Anyways, I wanted to thank everybody for coming. This was a great discussion tonight. I hope you all found it valuable. Thank you to the staff team who did a really great job explaining municipal budgeting and how it works. And thank you to the communications team and the recreation and events team for setting all of this up. We appreciate it very much. I just wanted to end on a couple of thoughts just about municipal budgeting overall, just to let the community know more than anything else that at the end of the day, council is going to have a really, really hard time this year. We know that going into it. We know that there are a lot of competing demands. And when council's looking at the budget, there's a few things that we're looking at. Our goal is to build and maintain infrastructure that goes beyond function. We want to make sure that the investments we make are not just for today, but they're for the future as well. We do want to make enhancements to our parks, our recreation programs, and that's a commitment not only to provide the space, to provide spaces that allow our residents to lead active, healthy lives, but also spaces where they can connect and have fun and make lasting memories with family and friends. We love to do upgrades to parks, trails, playgrounds, improvements to our downtown core. All of those things support our businesses, support tourism to the community, and encourage a strong economy. Road resurfacing, Tim's favorite topic, and maintenance programs are really about more than just infrastructure improvements. They're really making sure that routes that we use are safe, reliable methods of transportation for our community. The roads that we have are arteries of our community, and keeping them in good condition is really important. It's not just about smooth travel, but making sure that they're safe. And basically, at the end of the day, the last comment that I have is that each program and investment that we make in our budget is really carefully considered, and we do think about those as a way to elevate our community and make it a great place for everybody who lives and works here. So stay tuned for the budget sessions, which will be coming up in December. I'm sure it's going to be a difficult, challenging time, but we're up for the challenge, and we'll be around for a little while. If you want to talk offline, ask any questions. Again, thank you to all of you for coming, and our next one will likely be in January or February for our next quarterly town hall. So thank you guys.